when you believe in God, but you won't forgive. That's our topic for today. We couldn't have come this far unless we had already learned that belief in God doesn't automatically make knowing God in an intimate relationship. But we learned that God desires to have that kind of relationship with us. We learned that Christian atheists, that they might believe in God, but it doesn't automatically result in their hearts knowing that God loves them. But we learned that God does deeply desire to be in a loving relationship with us. We learned that Christian atheists believe in God, but that doesn't automatically result in wanting to communicate with God. But we learned at the end of that God deeply desires to communicate with us in order to maintain that loving, intimate relationship. We also learned that belief in God last week doesn't automatically provide us with an easy button, or doesn't keep us from blaming God when we experience pain in our world. Christian atheists may believe in God, but they oftentimes don't think God is fair. But you learned through Becky Nystrom in the message last week that God walks with us as we experience pain in our world. We had to have that foundation for us to learn to forgive. Today, we're going to examine the Christian atheist position, which is to believe in God, but not be willing to forgive. Now, that's a heck of a way to live. There's a better way to live, and we're going to talk about that this morning. As I said, this is the fifth part in the Christian Atheist series, believing in God, but living as if God doesn't exist. I've said it every week. This series is for those of you who are courageous enough to admit your hypocrisy and be willing to grow in faith. And you keep coming back. So thank you for being here. I want to again give credit to Craig Groeschel, who wrote the book, The Christian Atheist, Believing in God, but Living as if He doesn't exist. He has provided the basis for these messages, and we do still have one book for sale for $20, cash or check, made out to First Presbyterian Church. Okay. When you believe in God, but you don't want to forgive. Let's start there. That's the chapter in which Craig Groeschel weaves a story. It's a sad story, a story of personal bitterness resulting from an experience his little sister had. His little sister was dear to him because they shared a birthday. They had a special relationship. He was the big brother, she was the little sister. He was supposed to take care of her. Well, she was molested over a period of years by a close family friend who was a teacher. Terrible story. He weaves the story all the way throughout this chapter as to how he was unable to forgive and how God taught him to forgive this particular man. I don't have any similar stories in my own life or experiences in my life in which I wanted someone to die and burn in hell, like Craig Groeschel did. But perhaps you do. And perhaps you know someone who's experienced something similar. We all know that Christians are supposed to forgive. Right? That's where it all starts. But many of us, Christian atheists, think that there are exceptions to this rule. Sure, we should forgive most of the time. Maybe even almost all of the time. But forgive people like this molester, or someone who cheated us, or somebody who deeply disappointed us, forget about it. What's the result of holding on to those kinds of feelings? The result is bitterness. Bitterness festers like an infection. And we feel justified in our hatred. And the bitterness spreads throughout our lives. As a gardener, Hebrews 12:15 catches my attention. The writer of Hebrews says, keep a sharp eye out for weeds of bitter discontent. A thistle or two gone to seed can ruin a whole garden in no time. Those of you that live on the farm certainly know that. And it's a problem I have on the south side of my house. I love decorative globe blue thistle. And I planted one purposefully a couple of years ago. And it's beautiful. But every spring, right now, when I'm cleaning up the garden, I have to dig up at least half a dozen because they just spread all over the place and they love to grow. And they put down a taproot. You know, even something that's about this much above ground, it has more than that under the ground. The taproots are just absolutely incredible. They love to spread, and they love to put down taproots several feet long. In the same fashion, the root of bitterness starts to grow in our hearts. What's the function of roots? Roots absorb and store in plants. And our hearts absorb and store hurts and anger and hatred and thoughts of revenge. Bitterness keeps detailed accounts. Love and forgiveness doesn't. And that's what we do with our deep hurts. The root of bitterness pushes out shoots into other areas of our lives. And pretty soon it begins to destroy our ability to relate to other people. Not only the one who has hurt us, but other people as well. The longer we allow the root of bitterness to live, the harder it is to kill. You know, the longer the taproot gets in our hearts, and the more it spreads. That's what happens when we allow bitterness and the lack of forgiveness to go on and on and on.